first, could I have a motion for us to go back into public?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to a meeting of the Board of Education of Somerset Hills. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media, consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. Sorry. This is a meeting of the Board of Education of Somerset Hills where formal action may be taken. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Baker.
Here.
Ms. Cooper. Here. Mr. DiGiacchino.
Here.
Mr. Nail.
Here.
Mr. McDonald.
Here.
Mrs. Santoro. Here. Mrs. Tober. Here. Ms. Virtue. Here. Ms. Birch.
Here.
Mrs. Lees.
Here. Report of the superintendent.
There you go. Hi, everybody. Nice to see such a packed house. We're going to start with our middle school speakers, then we're going to go on to our high school speaker, then we're going to introduce our coaches that I know most people are here to hear, and we will celebrate all of the players that are here this evening. So, without further ado, you two ready? All right, take it away. Mr. Tober and Mr. McDonald.
Hello. My name is John Tober. I'm the Student Council President.
And hi, I'm Angus McDonald, and I'm serving as the Student Council Vice President. We've just finished our Attitude of Gratitude Week, and we had lots of thankfulness events due to this being the week before Thanksgiving. I'm a peer leader, and we had peer leaders that during all the lunches took pictures of students holding up feathers of what they were thankful for. This was a photo booth opportunity, and students got to wear little mustaches and even hats. Then we stapled the feathers to the turkey to make a big turkey of what BMS students were thankful for. For 8th graders, the peer leaders asked students if they wanted to be in a video saying what they were thankful for. We did the same for the staff as well. On the Friday of the lunch before Thanksgiving, we had tables set up so we could sort of have a round table lunch with our peers. This was special compared to what we usually have in the CAF.
The 7th and 8th graders did a wonderful job performing in the annual 7th and 8th grade play. This year's musical was Direct Junior. The plot and cast did a wonderful job. We had over 200 people attend the Thursday night performance. Ms. McGovern and Ms. Weber did an amazing job of turning these wonderful students into the finest actors.
Mr. Sands and the students in chorus have been working all year long mastering their songs to perform at this year's winter concert. Everyone did a great job and the songs were great. I'm also a part of the BMS Select Chorus.
Our band classes, orchestra, and our elite jazz band performed in the winter concert just last night. In addition, some members of the jazz band joined some high school students to perform multiple songs together. A special thank you to Mr. Noonan and Mr. Schneider for their hard work. I am also part of the BMS orchestra.
The 6th graders had their Winter Wonderland event after school today. Their event had a DJ and there were fun games and other activities for the students to do.
We have lots of opportunities at BMS where students can earn their community service hours. Ms. Overthorn posts events on her board all year long to show these opportunities. This month, BMS collected coats for the needy, which was one of these opportunities. We are also still collecting blankets and children and adult books for the Team Campbell Foundation.
The middle school basketball teams have had great success this year with wins over Madison Middle School and Mendon Borough in both boys and girls basketball.
The Earth Science team is preparing for our January competitions. Mr. King is working tirelessly for us 8th graders to master elite high school science material. We can't wait for another successful year.
We look forward to being back with you in January and sharing what else is going on at our school. We also will know the winner of the December house competition by then.
Hello, hope everybody's doing great. So great to see so many people here. I wanted to apologize for not being here at the last meeting, so I'm going to do a little quick summary of some of the things that happened last month. So the marking period officially ended on November 6th, which is really great because we're coming closer to the end of the first semester. The fall play, History at BOE Meeting, was a really great success. It happened from Friday to Sunday, which was the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. I personally went to watch it. I don't know if anybody else in the audience did, but I was really impressed, as I usually am. The NHS blood drive was on the 26th, and it was also a really great success. In fact, we actually had a backup, and we had to shut down people. It was basically canceled, so after, I believe, 7th period, people that signed up for it could not donate blood because of how many people we ended up having, which I guess is always really good news. And then we're also, another really great news is that boys soccer actually won the Group 2 state champ title on November 20th, giving Coach Espada his 5th state champ title, which is all the coaches champ title. On some other really great special news, the high school was actually rated number 17 for the best STEM schools of all NJ public schools. So just thank the students, the faculty, the staff, the Board of Education for making the high school so successful. So that's pretty awesome news and part of the school. As far as seniors, it's kind of starting the season of seniors where we're really starting to get into some really cool activities. Last month we had our dodgeball tournament. It's basically organized, so everybody can really participate if they want to, but it was basically, it's headed by the student council, and teams can you can sign up with your peers and anything you want, and then go against different teams. So I personally participated, and it's always nice to see my friends get into some nice competition. So it was really fun to watch that. There was also the Tricky Tray for project graduation. Basically, parents just get together and they basically donate for project graduation, which is at the very end of the year when it's for the last blast, which is what we call it. Seniors are also starting to hear back from colleges, so this is kind of the time when the good news is lingering in the air, which is always really good. And as far as some senior privileges, which I've been tracking with you guys how that's been going this entire time, but as of now, we actually have to go through Church Street because they've actually threatened to basically press charges to the specific individuals who might cross underneath the fence. So for now, people are actually going through the long way and kind of coming out through the road, through Morristown Road. So I'll let you guys know if anything changes, but it doesn't really sound like anything will. As far as sports, winter sports have officially begun with practice starting. I believe the boys basketball had a scrimmage, might even have a scrimmage tonight. I'm not 100% sure. And then the girls basketball had a scrimmage, I believe, on Monday. And then the swim team is actually taking the first victory of the year as they took a victory over Watchung Hills not too long ago. And then also, along with boys soccer, the girls field hockey is also here for winning county finals. So again, to you guys, sports teams are doing such a great job here, so it's always really great that they're here to be honored. And something I haven't mentioned is the BHS Cafe and Goods at the annex that is here. So actually what we do is that the STAR students are in charge of selling like little goods. Sometimes they make them, sometimes they buy them and then sell them. But like last year, it's been a really great success. They come around in the media center, usually giving us like flyers of whatever it is that they're selling. And I feel like all the students and all my friends are always really excited to go in there and get something. Key Club, they're actually having their annual pie sale tomorrow, and they usually raise a lot of money every single year with this. It's definitely their most successful part of the year as far as that goes, so we should be really excited to see where they decide to donate to, but also how much they end up getting. And choir and band. Choir just recently had their concert last week, and band is having their concert tomorrow night at the PAC. So a lot of concerts and a lot of major things going on. But yeah, so as we wrap up the holiday season, we're kind of starting to see some of that holiday cheer go around BHS. So some of the teachers, usually with other holidays as well, but they're actually decorating their door. And sometimes they'll have like little competitions to see like who has the best door and such. And usually Miss Dolson, which is, she is librarian of the media center, she sometimes kind of signs up a little craft, little something for us to do over the holidays. So I hope everybody has a great holiday season. And I can't wait to come back with you guys in 2020 and let you know of any great and awesome things that are up in BHS. And yeah, thank you guys.
We did try to fill in for you, we didn't do nearly as good.
Thank you.
All right, no favoritism, we're just gonna start with our soccer team because he's closer to the podium. So, Mr. Laspada, why don't you come up and say a few brief words about all of these people who are here to celebrate this?
Right, yeah. Also because I'm smaller. Right, shorter,
I
bigger.
didn't say that.
You're being nice. Anyway, thank you. I'd like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Dempsey, Ms. Butler for honoring the 2019 boys soccer team for their accomplishments this season. And I think missed in the whole other part was they did win the conference, which I always think is pretty successful because you got to play everybody twice and you got to go out to Del Valle and all those places and play in the cow pastures and stuff. So kind of difficult, to say the least. And they also won a Section 2 title, also to go along with the Group 2 state title. I want to thank those behind the scenes. Our managers are here. If they'd like to stand real quick. Where are they? One tall boy is here. But they did a great job. They kept the other team in check by running the sidelines and make sure the other team didn't keep throwing the ball into the other guys and not to us, you know what I mean? Or hold on to it and say, oh, I'm sorry, I'll give it to you now. And that's true, that does happen. So anyway, they did well doing that. I'd like to acknowledge my outstanding coaches, Alan Thurlow. 11 years, right, Alan? Or is it 12 now?
I don't know.
Probably too long. He's got a few gray hairs going now. Lawrence Fry. Our volunteer assistant, Fernando Rivera. I'd like to also acknowledge, and I know it's maybe I'm going a little bit off tangent, but not long, I promise, real quick. Also the other fall coaches, they all did really well. I mean, I was just amazed that every time Mike was sending out different things about, you know, the cross country and the football and of course field hockey and everything else and us and girls or whatever, it was just great. And I was going, man, I can't believe this. It's Group 2 and all these teams are in the hunt or they're going to maybe get something and no one's left out. Have I left the team out, did I? Oh, not? All right, good. So anyway, I was really impressed. And I just went away saying how truly, you know, lucky this school is to have so much buzzing and so much going on, you know, in the community, which is great. The team this year, we were thinking about this. There's 80 to 100 high schools that have boys soccer. 64 of those programs all compete in the state tournament. So there's quite a few teams that have to be knocked off along the way. It's amazing that we got through all that in the 6 games we did, and were able to, and 3 of them we were the underdogs, you know, which was great, because I'd rather be that than the one that I'm expecting to win, you know. And they did just so well. And it seemed like every game they got better and better and better. And it just their attitudes and just the way they approached the game. And it was just a pleasure, because I've always said to it, it's like being, and of course, you know well, okay, in 2011, it's like being on a train and getting on it, and you know the following stop where you want to go, and you hope the train doesn't stop. Well, we got on the train and we just kept going and going, and I know I probably said this before, and it was a great ride. So it was tremendous. I really appreciate their efforts. They finished up 19-2-1, 17th, I believe, in the top 20, right, Alan? All schools, public and private. They broke 2 school records. The 15 shutouts, so it means the other teams did not score on us in 15 games. They also had only 10 goals scored against us. So it's like everybody was calling us like we just played defense. No, we scored, but I always kept saying to the boys, I'd rather us not let anybody score, because it's even better. But I look at this and attribute it to a couple things, so I'm not being corny, but I attribute it to, one, the way they just bought in. Okay, it's like they were all in. Nobody was out. They bought into our team philosophy, the sense of our family, the endless time that we worked in the off season, right guys? That you kept saying, oh my goodness, here we go again, that they put all this time in. It was endless, and the coaching staff, the discipline, on and off the field. Because I said to them, if they're not good in the classroom, then what good is it if we're being good out here? Because we're not going to be supported. And who wants to be that way? So I said it's important to do both. Being grateful, having pride, showing humility, being thankful for what we have and the gifts we have and the great character that they showed. And times when other teams kicked them and pushed them and called them names, and I'm telling you, some of the things that went on, and they just held proud. And they said, we're bigger than that. So to me, it's not about any one person. I've said this before, probably heard it recently, but rather about the team. It's about BHS. Seeing all the kids jumping out of the bleachers when we won, and they're covering the field and players and jumping up and down. It was awesome. People I didn't even remember, from classes, and they were saying, remember, now I do, because after I got up off the field, it was crazy. It was great. Tremendous, and the community. When we run around in the fire trucks and people coming out of their homes. We're blessed, and it's just something you can't really say any more about it than that. We're very blessed. It's a great community, a great town. I'll just have the boys quickly stand. Okay?
Have them
Now
come
let's
up
stand.
here too.
What's
so
that?
you
Yeah?
can embarrass them.
Okay.
Yeah, let them-
I can do that. I'm good at that. Captains Will Lewitt, Captain Gilberto Ferrara,
Come on, all the
Come on
way
up,
up,
guys.
Will. Come on.
Elliot Dietrich, Miguel Ortiz, all of them were captains, all four. Seniors, Nelson Ferrara, Nelson. Carlos Hernandez, John Quinto Lima. Guys, make a little room as you slide down. And then we'll do a turnaround so the board will see your faces too. Right? They're not getting the best look right now. Sorry, I just said that. Underclassman Jack Werlick, Greg Ferrara, Nico Bodie, Alejo Wolber, Duncan Burke, Dan Casabille, Carlos Thompson, Aubrey Fresalone, Sean Honeywell. Okay? This is the 2019 Group 2 State Champs.
Okay, come on, great job. Thanks to everybody too for coming out. We know you guys have been honored and honored and honored some more. And we appreciate it. Sarah Falzerano, I know it's a tough act to follow.
I know, right?
So
Now I know why you wanted him to go first. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Falzerano, head field hockey coach here at the high school. Thank you, Board of Ed, for having us here tonight. It's really always special for the girls and for us as a coaching staff to be here. Thanks to Mike and Amy, they're not here tonight, but they're Mike Hoppy and Amy Malzone, they're the dynamic duo that get everything done. Anything we need, they're there for us, which means we can be there for the girls. Their jobs are thankless. Thank you to my coaches, Leslie O'Connor, Jess Tynan, Carolyn Sheehan. Without the three of you, I would not be standing here. I always tell the girls that a great team is about your dynamic, it's about how you work together. Everybody brings a little bit to the pieces of the puzzle, they bring a piece and we create a great team together. That's what the four of us do, we work together beautifully. Congratulations, Mr. Laspada, and to your coaches. Winning a Group 2, we won the I want to say only a county title. A county title is phenomenal. It is the third one we've won in a row, and that's so But what the soccer team has accomplished this year, a Group 2 title, I don't know that many people understand just how difficult that is. Not only to win their section, but to go on and win Group 2. So difficult and so impressive. That's kind of my dream as a coach, and then I'll be able to retire. So, or I could just get 5 like you. So as a coaching staff, we've reflected, we stop and get together and meet together every couple of weeks of the season whenever we're all together, and we reflect and we think about what we need to change, what we need to work on, just as teachers do. And at the beginning of the season, we thought, wow, we lost 13 seniors from last year's team. We were number 6 in the state. We were 23-1 in the 2018 season. The girls are coming in going, we're not going to. We have a lot of work to do. And wow, what an amazing effort they put in. What an amazing job they did. The hardest thing to do as a coach is to coach confidence, to coach belief, to coach camaraderie. We can coach drills all day long, and I'm sure you all can attest to that. We can coach drills and skills all day long, but to coach how to work together is one of the hardest things. These girls listened, and they worked, and they did it, and that's the difference in this season. This, by far, has been the most rewarding season out of my 16 that I've ever coached. They listened, they worked, they believed in themselves, they developed friendships that weren't there at the beginning of the season, and now I know that they have lifelong friends together and memories together. We think without a doubt that this team is the most rewarding because not only did they battle with some of the best teams of the state, we took Rumson, who won the section last year, they took them to a 1-0 loss, which they went on to win the section, they went on to be contenders in the group. But they also went on to show that Bernard's field hockey, we are the smallest Group 2 team in the entire state. Group 2, North 2 Group 2, which we're in, has 6 top 20 teams in it. It is the hardest section in the entire state, and we were a contender and went to the finals, and not this year, which was quote-unquote a rebuilding year. One reporter actually said that we were dead in the water, and we used that as motivation to show the girls, nobody has confidence in you, what are you going to do about it, and what a life lesson that was. So they absorbed everything that was put at them, and they have nowhere to go but up. If this is what a rebuilding year is 3-peat county finalists, winners, 3-peat county winners, we have nowhere to go but to the likes of boys soccer and the cross-country team and the rest of the fall sports this season. So congratulations to you girls. I know there's only a small group of you here tonight, so congratulations to you girls for achieving. You worked so hard from day one. You all worked, and this is all of them, not just the 4 of you. You worked so hard from day one and deserve all the accolations you get for this season. I cannot wait to see what the next few years bring. Thank you. Okay, so, ladies, Natalie and Christina and Emily and Sam, come on up. We were on the group. Yeah. Sure. Congratulations. One more time.
All right, now not that we're kicking anybody out, but now we get to the stuff that perhaps is a little bit drier. So we realize that you may not want to sit and hear about the strategic plan and hear all of the committee reports. So if you choose to leave now, you won't hurt our feelings. If you choose to stay, we'll make it as lively.
Move the projector, move the cameras out.
He does such a great job. Going for the close read.
I'm gonna go sit over there.
We don't need to know.
I mean, he did request that. Yes. Yes. Before Dr. Dempsey starts on the strategic plan, I just wanted to make a few remarks about our changes in our board. So we just had an election and we have 3 people for different reasons who will not be with us in January, and I wanted to make a few comments about them. First is Greg DiGiacchino. Where'd you go, Greg?
There he is.
Oh, there you are, you're right. I'm so used to you being over here for 3 years. Greg has had 3 terms on the board and has always cared deeply for the students. His concerns for fiscal responsibility have resonated. Your hard work and dedication to the intergenerational prom was noted last week by Tim. It is truly an amazing event for both the community and the students and staff. We know you have a new grandchild, and we wish you all the best. Secondly, Jan Mayo. Jan, you've only been with us for a short while, but your contribution has been bigger than the time would suggest. I personally have learned a lot from you. Your ideas and insights, as well as incredible attention to detail, will surely be missed. Best of luck. And Monica, there you are, see? Our Bedminster rep. Monica has been a Bedminster board member for 7 years and has been the Somerset Hills rep for 3. She has been extremely helpful on the curriculum committee and also was instrumental in settling the Bedminster contract. Thank you for that. Your sharp wit will be missed, and we wish you the best in your robotics and STEM curricular pursuits. Thank you all for your time and service to the board.
Well, I fear this may seem a little dull by comparison to our great beginning, but I will do the best that I can to make this informative without being too long-winded. You will recall that last month I was here talking to you about other aspects of the strategic plan, and I sort of divided it up into 2 pieces. So this is your second update, and we will be looking at engagement and learning. To just remind us all what the timeline of this initiative looked like, we spent some time back, believe it or not, it's 3 years ago almost, launching the development of this plan. Those 3 public meetings focused on strengths and challenges, creating a vision, and identifying and prioritizing goals. Certainly the work that we did subsequent to that focused on how to put plans in place, and we have had public reports on our progress, both in November of 17 and 18, and then last month and this month. I always share the mission statement, though we always laugh that people don't remember it, even though one of our goals was to come up with something that we could remember. However, I do think that the substance of it certainly speaks to what the group felt was important. The goals that were identified spanned these 5 areas. Last time I spoke about health and wellness and how that dovetailed with the district facility work that we put in place. Tonight I'll be talking about teaching and learning 21st century skills and community and civic engagement. When I looked at the pieces that had been identified under each of those, I just wanted to point out the similarities that are evidenced within teaching and learning and 21st century skills. Certainly we would expect overlap, but I will be combining those tonight because I think looking at that notion of authentic learning, they just sort of fit together nicely. So I'll start by talking about the visual arts curriculum. When conversations were happening around the strategic plan, one thing that was clear was that there was a real mandate to look at what we were doing K-12 in the visual arts. I'm happy to say that that work has really produced some, what I feel are meaningful changes. We have 2 new teachers, one at the middle school and one at the high school. We've worked on curriculum updates in grades 5 through 12. We have some new art classes proposed for next year at the high school, 3D sculpture and ceramics class, as well as a global artisan class that will focus on kind of makers and crafts and sort of think Etsy, how that dovetails with entrepreneurship. We have expanded use of materials at the middle school and the high school. Both schools have kilns that have not necessarily been used in recent years, and they will be if they're not being used already. We've had some interesting field trips for the high school. Last year, the advanced art and AP students visited Princeton to see a display of exemplar 2D portfolios. I believe they went this year as well. There was also a trip in the spring to the botanical gardens for the general art students and the digital photography students. Bedwell has launched a new digital art gallery that is available off their website, so that we are looking to showcase art in ways that we haven't historically. We have a community partnership with the borough, and our art teacher here and our art supervisor are working closely with the artist that the borough has engaged in terms of this mural that will be in the center of town and should be painted in the spring. And we're looking at those expanding showcase opportunities I mentioned. We have a new display case at the middle school. We actually have a digital photography display that's starting tonight at Starbucks. In March, the artists from the middle school will be displaying work in the Burnsville Library. And students from the middle school are looking to enter the Somerset County Teen Arts Festival in the spring. I don't want to necessarily read all these things to you, but you can certainly see that when it comes to authentic learning opportunities, there's been a lot of sort of groundwork that has been done. Certainly the Project Lead the Way curriculum that has been embedded in the engineering courses at the high school is one example of that. It does provide opportunities for college kind of credits and pathways with actually dozens of colleges and universities. Our work with Teachers College is continuing, and I think that is another example of curriculum that certainly all of the teachers who engage in that work and the supervisors feel is meaningful and authentic. We have adopted a more authentic approach to vocabulary instruction, so gone are the little books that are sort of separate and distinct, and our vocabulary instruction is much more embedded in our reading and writing. The Bedwell Garden is certainly an example of how we are looking to make learning authentic. It has been integrated into the curriculum at Bedwell, and we've had recent conversations here about how to expand that work into the middle school and into work with the local garden club. One thing that I'm excited about that Michael Catelli is working on this year is to look at the local history. He's gone to the Burnsville Public Library and worked with the volunteers there in their local history room. And he's developing some opportunities for fifth graders to work with resources in the community through their social studies work, which should start this spring. The Community Relations Committee has really worked hard over the last year and a half to look at this aspect of partnerships, and we sort of focused on local opportunities at first. They were the group that brought the notion of internship opportunities forward, which was passed on to the Curriculum Committee, and certainly Colleen Butler has gotten in on the work to outreach to the Burnsville Chamber of Commerce and the Basking Ridge Business Alliance to look for pathways to actualize these internship opportunities. We have developed a draft of a kind of launch plan, and so looking at during budget season how best to do that with the resources that we currently have. In terms of virtual learning opportunities, certainly Bedwell has worked with Mystery Skype for a while. There's also lots of work they do there with Scott the Scientist. At the middle school, we've had some virtual labs through the generosity of Sanofi. And the high school has a virtual academy that offers students opportunities to take courses that we do not offer locally. So that's something that I don't know that people are always aware of. In terms of those partnerships, we are all, again, looking locally. The Burnsville Library, currently all of our new teachers have a sort of field trip, if you will, to the library when they come to us in August, and they all get their library cards and learn about all that that facility can offer. And Janice has spoken to the group from the Curriculum Committee standpoint in terms of the Garden Club and the work that we hope to do with them. I do also want to point out that the board has been very generous in its inclusion of AFS students in the last 2 years. So we have students here now who are coming to us from outside of the country, and that would not necessarily be possible without the board approving their applications, but I do think it really does provide an opportunity for those students as well as our students here to have conversations and learn about one another and about different places in the world that they would not have otherwise. When we talk about the work that we've done around digital citizenship, I just wanted to kind of point out all the different pieces of digital citizenship. We have embedded some curriculum that comes out of commonsense.org, which is a research-based curriculum that was designed with something called Project Zero out of the Harvard Graduate School of Education. The middle school has a 6th grade digital citizenship course offering, but there was a feeling in conversation that waiting until the middle of middle school was perhaps too late to really grow this skill set. So last summer, the topic was infused into the health curriculum K through 8. Certainly last time I talked about a lot of the programming that our HSAs and our guidance have offered to the community and to parents and students around topics of digital citizenship. And we also infused through some grant work out of Somerset County a curriculum called We're Not Buying It in our grades 6 through 8, which is a media literacy program that targets middle school, and it aims to prevent or delay the onset of alcohol, marijuana, and prescription drug abuse, and also to prevent bullying. One of the things that when we talk about 21st century skills that the group talked a lot about was STEM opportunities. You heard Haley tell us today that Bernards High School was recognized as being a school that excels in its abilities to offer students with STEM opportunities. We also were recognized for, I believe, the number of female students who took AP Computer Science, which I forgot to note on here. Project Lead the Way curriculum is certainly falls under that STEM umbrella. We do have a technology teacher who was hired for the middle school and looking at how to revitalize some of the opportunities that were happening up there, which led to the BMS Robotics Club kind of growing into something that it had not been before that point in time. We now have an 8th grade coding course there as well. Bedwell sent a great group of kids to participate in Steam Tank. They made it through their regional competition and came to Atlantic City when the board was down there for New Jersey school boards, and the middle school is looking to have a team go there next year as well. Chef has been incredibly generous in funding lots of STEM opportunities, whether it's through makerspace materials for both Bedwell and the middle school, and they are currently looking at a major initiative that would really kind of transform the learning space in Mr. Thurlow's room at Bedwell. When we talk about community and civic engagement, I go back to the Community Relations Committee. I feel as though they have really spearheaded a lot of this work. We have a bilingual HSA group that is has really become something that I think glues a lot of disparate pieces of our work together. They look at the district from K through 12. Sama is here and she is instrumental in that work. And we are lucky to really have people like Sama and like Liz Robles who have just invested so much of their energy in that. We talked about the Bernardsville mural. I talked about those virtual labs that are part of our Sanofi partnership. We have those new relationships with the Chamber and the Business Alliance. I talked about the library and the enhancement to the social studies curriculum. I think it speaks to the plan when you see things that can kind of fall under different headings, because really an outgrowth of this dialogue spanned different concepts, and it was this notion of partnerships and community, but also STEM, but also 21st century. And in terms of the next steps, I'm very happy to report that we have, the board has talked to Gwen Thornton, and she's going to be working with us early in 2020 to look at the strategic plan from a standpoint of, okay, 3 years have gone by, although it's hard to believe it's been that long, and where do we now take this work? We want to ensure that from a district perspective, we are always focused on continuous improvement, and that cycle of conversation and reflection and action planning, needs to be ongoing and not something that we kind of put on a shelf. Is there anybody who has any questions at all? Mr. Palmer?
One question, what are you using as a gauge to see if the strategic plan is working? Are you looking at score improvements? Are you looking at character improvement?
I'm gonna be honest with you, Lou. One of the things that was a challenge for me coming in was that we had a strategic plan that certainly spoke to a lot of different arenas that were important to the community and the people that participated. But I don't know that the document that was produced after that really considered the kind of metrics that you're talking about. I think when you talk about something like score improvement, it's a soft link to something like community engagement. We could say engaged communities naturally produce students who do better, but is that really something that we can tie a real cause and effect to? Perhaps not necessarily. One of the things that I would hope from this renewal is that we would be poised to create something that would perhaps look a little bit more like the action plans that came out of the strategic plan that was a few years before that, which were very much tied to year 1, year 2, year 3 objectives, and including that sense of how do we know if this is, to use your word, working. I think that certainly from a vantage of who comes out to have these conversations, there's some thought that if people, and I know lots of people who were here were part of those dialogues, if there's a sense that their voices were heard and we took steps that seem appropriate with the goals that were established, I guess I would argue that that would seem like it worked. It set our course and we followed it, and now we're ready to sort of cycle back to the beginning. Sure. Anybody else? All right, thank you.
I think it's important, thank you for laying that out, I think it's really helpful because, you know, it was a lot of work. We put a lot of time into it, the community helped and the staff, and I understand the question about measurements. I feel like it has certainly given us areas to really focus on and to come back to and to focus our resources on. And I do think we've made a lot of improvements, and it's exciting to see it written down, the part about the arts and what we've done for student wellness has been really big, and it definitely has helped, I think, board members inform our decisions on what it is that we're trying to achieve. So it was good, and it'll be good to renew it, and I think we're looking to do that early February. So we'll have news on that when we get dates on the calendar, because we'll want to have community input and, you know, kind of review the whole thing. What have we done? Where are we? What needs to be dropped? What, you know, if anything, and it will give us some renewed energy
And commitment.
Okay. I'm just going to say that tonight we are going to change up the agenda just a little bit because we have two people with birthdays on the board today, both Janice and Tim.
What is the probability?
I know, it's just crazy. And guess what, their birthday's the same day every year, but it just so happens to be a board meeting this year. So Tim has to go somewhere, we're gonna hear from curriculum a little bit out of order, but in the meantime, I just want to say the public questions and comments for actionable agenda items are very much welcomed. We welcome input from the public. Public comments are welcome at this time on any agenda item. Towards the end of the meeting, there is a second public forum on any topic. Please state your name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, but an individual may speak a second time after all others who wish to speak on the topic have been heard. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. In instances where the board feels that there is a misunderstanding or inaccuracy, the board president or superintendent may address the comment. In accordance with New Jersey statute, the board will not discuss matters regarding specific personnel. Public questions and comments will be limited to 30 minutes. Thank you for your input.
I have just one thing
Yes.
under that umbrella.
Sure.
Can I go?
Yes.
Okay.
You can go.
It's my first Board of Ed meeting, so I apologize.
That's okay.
Happy
Welcome
birthday.
newbies.
Happy 29th. My name's Jim Fitzsimmons. I have 2 children at the high school. My son Braden is a junior and Molly's a freshman. So this year, the lacrosse team asked me to be the treasurer, and I was the treasurer for my older son when he went through. So they're like, okay, Fitz, you gotta, you have to step up and do this. So we went over the budget. It's for next season. It starts in February or March, and we have to raise like $12,000. And we kicked around ideas. And the thing we did a couple years ago came up, and they told me, they go, you better go to the board and ask if you can do that because you need to be able to do that, and we don't want to get in any trouble. So we did that online fundraiser thing, and we raised $18,000 in a week, and it covered us for that year, and it covered us for the next year. So, and it was very, from a time standpoint, it was a lot less time, that everyone had to spend, doing the candle sales and the popcorn sales and standing out front of King's, and it was just very efficient, I guess. But I didn't want to get in any trouble as a volunteer, so I figured I would come tonight and ask if I could do that, I do have a backup plan, if you don't think that's the best thing for us to do. But I just wanted to, is everyone familiar with it? Okay, you're familiar. And I guess, can I do it?
I guess this could fall under parent fundraisers, although you're not actually on here. However, I'm going to just say that we addressed this issue of SNAP rates in a pretty comprehensive manner last year, and the board decided that we were not in favor of students using it. We heard a lot of complaints from parents and students. Students felt pressure to give these lists of emails and were very uncomfortable with it. Parents did not want to give friends and family emails out because we also couldn't vet the SNAP raise process for any kind of cyber stuff that would be going on. We didn't know. I mean, if they had a virus and then we somehow got our people infected, we didn't think that was a good idea. And also, SNAP raise takes a really big percentage, right, Janice? You studied that, and that it seemed to be crazy what they charge.
Well, I did investigate some other vendors that are like at 10%.
But for the reasons that I said, I know that athletes they really didn't feel good about giving these email lists, and they got a lot of pressure to do it, and I saw it firsthand.
Okay, I just had to ask it. I
Thank
do
you for
have Plan
asking.
B, but.
Good for your Plan B.
Yeah, and thanks for all you're doing for the school. It's
Thank
a
you.
great job. Okay, thanks.
Any other comments? Yes.
So is this the open forum? So
This is for actionable agenda items.
but it's not on the agenda, that's why I'm confused.
Then that comes later.
Sorry?
Then that comes later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Mr. Palmer.
Excuse me, I'm hopping here a little bit.
You all right?
I've been bad. I'm here for one of your agenda items. I'm sorry, I really wasn't planning on doing this, but I just can't help myself. So, bear with me. I have a question about the second reading on your policy for the student transportation, 8600. Is that replacing the existing policy?
The existing 8600, yes, it's
Yeah.
a mandated update from Strauss Esme.
Yeah, I'm assuming that was from recommended from Strauss Esme. How does that handle your subscription busing? Because now your policy doesn't have
No.
anything.
It should not be a change to the existing.
Well, this policy says doesn't have anything related to subscription or courtesy busing. So if your policy doesn't say that you can do it, can you do it?
That is my understanding, yes.
Oh, okay. I just
Did you look through the regulation as well?
I don't know. I just saw it was up here.
Alright,
So
because my understanding is that it is in
I
there
just-
and that it's no change to it.
Okay, because in the previous policy
Right.
spelled out
No, I can
the
understand why
courtesy
you,
busing and
Right.
within the 2 miles, within the 2.5 miles and things like that. So I
Right.
just
Yes.
didn't want you,
yes,
if you're gonna do that at budget time,
Yeah.
you're gonna still have subscription busing for people within the 2
there,
miles.
there was
that you're still able
no
to do it.
intent to change any of that. What I can tell you, Lou, is that we can look at these again at the policy committee through that lens. And
Yeah.
certainly if we see that there's something that needs to go back in there, we can fix that.
Yeah, I would,
Yeah.
only because if
Oh,
at budget
absolutely.
time,
No.
if you want to do that and you can't,
No,
or
no, there was
if I
no,
come and say, I don't think you can have subscription busing because you don't have it in your policy.
no.
I don't
And we
read
would
it.
not want anybody in the public along that same vein to think that we were somehow trying to change what we are offering to our stakeholders.
Great, thanks. I have one more other comment. I did come here tonight to thank Greg. Knowing Greg, I know he doesn't want anyone to say anything about him, but I would be remiss if I didn't thank him for the dedicated service to this board, the Somerset Hills School District community, and especially the students. Even if he was the lone voice, Greg only had the best interest of the students and the community when discussing an issue he was passionate about. He was not afraid to propose programs that some may consider controversial. About 8 to 10 years ago, Greg did an extensive search and survey on all schools with random drug testing and proposed that the Somerset Hills School District look into establishing this at the high school. He also did research on the proposed establishment of a school resource officer. Both these ideas did not have much support at the time, but it did not deter Greg from voicing his opinion whenever he had an opportunity to revisit. Within the last few years, both of these have been approved by this Board of Education. Greg was also concerned about the inequity in the girls' sports and Title IX. He was a driving force behind establishing the girls lacrosse as a varsity sport. This is still one of his concerns, and I know eventually there will be a girls' volleyball team. Greg also brought to the board the idea of the intergenerational prom, which has been a great success. This is just a few of the things, Greg's contributions. Greg brought his 30 plus years as an educator into every discussion, which is invaluable to board members that do not work in the educational field. I just want to thank Greg for your service on the board. The students at Somerset Hills School District are better off for it. I just wanted to thank you personally. Thank you.
Any other comments on agenda items? Okay, seeing none, approval of minutes.
Second. Second. Did you,
You wanna make a motion?
oh, so
You can make
yes,
the
I'll make
motion.
it.
Second?
Thanks, Jan.
Okay, thank you.
Any discussion? Roll call. Mr. Baker?
Abstain.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino?
Yes.
Mr. Mayo?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes. Okay, we're gonna move right into curriculum, and Janice was out, so Tim is going to give a report.
Fantastic. So I'll be reporting out
Happy birthday, the two of you.
Happy birthday.
Do you need my platform?
I was hoping to borrow your platform. But no, I will report out the minutes from the curriculum committee meeting. Our chairperson was doing some curriculum research in Las Vegas. I believe it was on statistics and probability. I expect that will be brought back, those lessons will be brought back and applied in the classroom in future meetings. We talked about a lot in this particular curriculum committee meeting about ways to sort of expand our curriculum beyond just academics and around career and professional development. And I just thought it was noteworthy that two people who are leaving this board have been sort of deeply involved in those issues. You know, the idea of internships and getting connected with the community kind of came out of the community relations committee that really, you know, is something that Greg DiGiacchino was really a major supporter of and proponent of for a long period of time. That committee now exists. Kathy Tober is leading those efforts. But it's a result of the work that Greg has done. So I just thought it was worthwhile noting that. And Monica, who has been sort of, you know, an active member of this curriculum committee for many years, constantly brings in really interesting and innovative ideas, and on a lot of it on STEM, but you know, this particular session was a lot of it on other avenues out there and resources and internships and programs. She's a creative mind and deeply connected, and we're going to miss you, but you were definitely an important part of what we did this week. So we met on Tuesday, last Tuesday the 3rd. It was a couple-hour meeting, 2-hour meeting. We talked about a lot of different things, but let me just start with the structured learning experiences. So Gretchen led a review and discussion regarding the implementation plan for the structured learning experiences for the 19 and 20 academic year. Sort of as a reminder, This program was initiated for the benefit of our STAR students, which are the students transitioning to adult responsibilities. And Colleen Butler had previously recommended that we expand the program to other interested students in the future, which I think is a good idea. So over the course of the fall, the faculty and the administration have worked to further develop and refine the program through a series of activities which include developing contacts and establishing connections in the local business community. This is where that community relations committee was really important. Hosting local business leaders in an open house in the Berners Cafe and store, which were led by our own STAR students. And it's an amazing experience when you go down and see what those students are doing in that store. Over the course of the following months, the administration is going to perform a cost-benefit analysis of outsourcing STAR program SLEs, structured learning experiences. Gretchen, you might want to sort of chime in a little bit about what that might mean. Further, the administration will determine the interest and feasibility of an additional professional obtaining an incremental SLE certification. Somebody from the high school, one of the faculty members. The committee also had an extensive discussion, and it was extensive, regarding the expanded SLE program to a broader base of student participants, really sort of reaching into the general ed population. The committee recommends that we develop a strategy and a plan to bring structure around the information and resources available for extracurricular and postgraduate career and professional development opportunities. Structured learning experiences can be part of the curriculum, but there's a lot of other things that are available that are outside of the curriculum. Some of the things that Monica introduced, were really important. So the committee believes that, that information regarding career and professional development opportunities are an important part of our mandate, as educators, and not just what happens in the classroom, but what we can do outside of the classroom. And we believe that we should take a phased approach, to developing these additional services. So specifically, the committee believes that there should be additional work to do to bring further definition required to develop a program for the broader student population, something that would be a little bit more structured, something that might be brought into our curriculum. And as such, the committee intends to continue its exploration of the resources and opportunities for career and professional development. We recommend seeking interest in the professional within the high school to be certified as SLE. Certification suggests that the topic be part of the updated strategic plan. I just note that, the idea of introducing our high school students to the world of the possible beyond what they learn in the classroom is a really important part of our educational mission. And internships are increasingly in the news. I just saw something yesterday in the New York Times, a big article about internships and its different sort of paths for students, and that's after high school, but we're very committed. I think the curriculum committee is to sort of bring some structure and bring more information around what can be available to students while they're in our school district. Colleen reported on her ongoing outreach to the relevant constituencies regarding our potential changes to the calendar for the upcoming year. And all reporting is that it's positively received, and we'll continue that outreach. The committee discussed the stipend as well as the potential responsibilities for what we had referred to as a sort of garden, but maybe more importantly, an environmental coordinator. We talked about the relevance of broadening our environmental program beyond just the 3 schools. We kind of started this discussion around a stipend to support the garden at Bedwell, but I think we realized that sort of environmental education and engagement in sort of environmental activities extends to all 3 schools, right? And that there's a lot of resources that are available beyond just our 4 walls. There's a lot of things that happen down at the farmers market. We talked a lot about that. Other programs that are out there, and so we sort of decided that we need to further explore and discuss what the appropriate job responsibilities are and description for that environmental coordinator. Gretchen provided an update on our strategic plan and the process there, and I think that's going to be exciting going forward into 2020 and 2021. Obviously, as the new superintendent coming into this school, it's important that you be able to have the opportunity to kind of put your own sort of imprint on the strategic plan.
And I participated in the development of this one. I appreciate that, but I do also recognize that it's an opportunity for the community to sort of voice what's important to them, so.
And this kind of ties into, Jan and I talked about this, and we talked about it, I think, about at the committee as well. But, as we go forward in the strategic plan, as we go forward in thinking about making students aware of the opportunities that exist beyond these four walls and exposing them to career opportunities and internships, hopefully that we can continue to seek counsel and input and support from Jan, who's been a terrific contribution to the board, but I think could make a real impact in some sort of maybe an ad hoc committee as we go forward. So not to pledge your time, but it was talked about, and I figured I'd report out on it. Gretchen provided a brief update on the review of the codes of conduct. Each school has codes of conduct, and there was some discussion regarding whether we had and what the structure of such codes would be, codes of conduct for coaches and other leaders of extracurricular activities. We reviewed the field trips, they were approved. And there was a brief discussion regarding the new New Jersey mandated curriculum changes, and the implementations of such changes will be reviewed and approved by the committee as they're put forward. All the topics that were related to health and wellness were deferred as a courtesy to our chairperson, who takes a great deal of pride in such issues. So we tabled those. And with that said, I want to move with some modifications. Items 1 through 5 on the agenda, and I believe it's item 3 on the addendum. The changes proposed are under item 1, approved field trips. Item number C, or letter C, would be tabled. 2 would be as provided in the agenda. 3, under approved professional development. Items G and H would be tabled. And then NK, thank you. I am only sitting in. And under 4 as described, and 5 as described, and under the addendum number 3 as described. So we'll move those as amended.
Second.
Any discussion, I would defer to our ever competent chairperson, but happy to.
Now, I was just gonna ask a question, but
Go ahead.
I was just gonna mention, about the strategic plan. I just wanted to maybe add a little something, because I was on the prior strategic plan, and we did meet post strategic plan, and what we discussed was, we had all these ideas and a lot of great things we wanted to do, and then we evaluated what was actually feasible, what we can go forward with, and perhaps some that really weren't going to work out very well for one reason or another. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you for a great job.
Tim, can I just ask about the SLE program, and thank you for the update, and I'm glad that the curriculum committee had such a great dialogue. But I'm not sure if you mentioned it and I missed it, but I'm just curious about the timeline. So are we talking, like, in terms of an implementation, is there a sense that it could be within the next year, 3 years, 5 years? I'm not getting a sense of how far out we're looking for the implementation.
Yeah. So we didn't lay out a timeline. I think what we discussed is there's a lot of resources that we need to sort of gather and bring some structure around and understand the kinds of opportunities that might exist out there. And we also need some administrative support, probably for managing sort of that information and those resources. Things that would be not part of the formal curriculum, And so that's sort of the idea of a phased approach. In other words, right now, we don't even have a mechanism for making people aware of, like, you know, what kind of internships might be available to high school students outside of the curriculum. So I think the idea was, hey, moving it in like a formal structured learning experience would be a curriculum-based experience, which is a great idea to strive for. Going from zero to a full curriculum in year one is probably difficult. So, but there's so much we can do now just to make people aware of it. Just doing things like, you know, even like career nights and resources and what else is out there, bringing some structure around it. Like we need to make people aware of what they can do today before we start incorporating it into the curriculum, I think is the idea. And I know that, you know, this has been something that you've talked about, you know, a great deal. And I don't want you to think that it was like, hey, this is a slow roll, like we're not really interested in it. I think the idea is like, the curriculum committee was very supportive of finding avenues for making people aware of what's out there in terms of the job profession and internships and sort of learning by doing. But we don't even have the basics organized today. That was the idea. So I think the hope would be, and I don't want to put words in Gretchen's mouth, but I think the hope would be that it would be like next year we would be bringing some structure to what, you know, what's available and what people might be interested in, with the idea that the following year, and this would be part of the strategic plan, the following year we might be able to incorporate something in a curriculum, you know, sort of structure.
So perhaps for a 2021 school year.
Yeah, but I
perhaps-
think progress, I mean, again, it really, like, it depends on what
Well,
we're.
I think your word phased is the key idea, that there's this notion of we have our STAR students who already are doing job sampling through an outside service provider. We now have a teacher who has this certification. How does it make sense in terms of our structure for us to leverage what she is able to do versus a consideration of what she has to do when she's in the classroom and what it means if she were to be outside of the classroom. And then this notion of extending that to general education students. And to Tim's point, first of all, we don't have anybody with that certification who is a general education teacher or an administrator necessarily. But we kind of talked about, does it necessarily fit within a school day curricular model? Is there room to flex a little bit of it as an extracurricular type of thing, as a phase one approach? And I think that's where the document that we looked at in both curriculum and in community relations sort of spoke to, all right, what have we done so far? What do we plan to do for the rest of this year, with the understanding that we go into next year with the benefit of a new strategic plan and hopefully somebody who might be interested in pursuing this certification.
One of the things we sort of explored the idea of was, you know, for kids who, you know, they might want to go out for a spring sport, but, you know, it's not their prime sport or they might not be that passionate about it. If there was an offering for some sort of a job opportunity that they could find through, I mean, call it an extracurricular setup, would that get some kids to say, hey, yeah, I'd like to do that if it's available. So I'm not going to play lacrosse because I sit on the bench, but I could do this through this program and maybe that would lead to something. And so we sort of felt like you could get a sense of how many students would actually be interested in that before you put in a curriculum, you put a lot of budgetary stuff in place and you built curriculum around it and tried to give people credit for things. Like, what's the appetite? Like, you could sort of, like we do a club for a sport before it becomes a sport, you could sort of test it. We talked about that idea. Like, would that be possible?
It's like, I'm sorry, Heather, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think also part of our discussion into looking at this next year for the general ed population was I would love to get a pulse on what students are really thinking about this type of idea, what they're interested in, and what type of opportunities they would feel they would want to engage in. It seems like to me like that's an area we could do a little bit more digging and get some information from, Dr. Nigel, his team, and obviously the students, because I don't know that I feel like they've had any input into any of this yet. So I think it's critical to see if this is something they want to get, because it is going to cost money and it is going to take a lot of time for administration. So not to say, I just think that's a critical component that we want to make sure we understand before we decide that this is a priority to spend a lot of time on.
But I don't want you to, because you were not in the room, I don't want you to hear that as like, hey, it's moving slowly. I think next year should be a year where we see real tangible results for what we're trying to achieve here, which is, you just sort of step back for a moment, right? You look at the breadth of extracurricular activities we have, particularly the athletic extracurricular activities and the resources that are allocated to that, which are fantastic. And we've celebrated some tremendous successes tonight, but we have no such thing for career and personal and professional development. And it's absolutely a part of our mandate. And so we need to sort of step back and say, look at all the hours, look at all the resources, human and capital resources that we're allocating to these things, and we're not doing the same for career and professional development, and we need to do that. So how do we start? Like when you, going from that to infuse it into the curriculum is a process. Going from that to making a difference in kids' lives next year is a much easier path.
I still
And
have
it's
this
taking
question
it
though, and I'm glad that you called that all out, Tim. I think that's great. But I know the committee is really thoughtfully trying to work through this. But what I'm wondering is, the Community Relations Committee, in conjunction with some of the administrators, went and did visits, right, to even determine if this was something we even wanted to think about. And 3 schools were visited. I'm wondering if we have gone back to any of those schools to talk through in detail some of the challenges they faced, how they worked through it, lessons learned, share with them some of our struggles, maybe they could share some insight with us. We're not reinventing the wheel, right?
Right, and I don't disagree with anything you said. I think those are important parts. I think when we devise our action plan, those would be the things that we would certainly include, I think, to Heather's point and Jamie's, and the notion that we have to see where the interest is huge. I don't know that we have, at this point, we've certainly talked to the kids in those programs that we went to visit about why they were interested and what they got out of it, but we haven't really posed those questions to our own.
Because what we recognized was if kids are doing that, then they're not doing something else. So how do we know they're gonna go for that?
I think it's very hard to ask children what they're interested in when they may not have experiences with a lot of things. And so in sports, it's pretty easy. You can go to a game, see what the sport's about. But if you wanted to be an entrepreneur, you think maybe you would. You might be very afraid of that because you have no way of experiencing that unless one of your parents or one of your relatives happens to be an entrepreneur. So unless we're creating some clubs and give children an opportunity to participate.
And
that's the thing about it, is that we have an idea of what we want to do. And the question is implementation. Implementation takes time, it takes thought, it takes money, and it takes all those things in conjunction of what is happening in the school itself. So we know the high school is going through a lot of changes too. We're going to the new rotation, and then they're talking about change in time. So all those things, we're taking those things in consideration before we get implementation. But that is something we have talked about, actually before you guys talked about it in your committee. I just want to mention that Janice, we brought it up in curriculum about that before that. So we've been talking about this in curriculum for a while.
We have, and I just wanted to add, a little bit more detail, because we have been discussing this, and the idea about when you're introducing something new, the kids might not even know, like with Jan, maybe they don't even know if they would like it or not. Maybe it's going to take time to develop and evolve. And So, and the fact that we need to get somebody certified to do this, because, you know, you need to send kids out. And having been a teacher and the whole student teacher things, you can't just send people out and not go in and monitor them to see. So I think what's happening now is that everything has to be researched, put in place, it has to evolve.
Policies have to be written.
And maybe, I think it's hard right now to give a definite date when this
I think you could potentially
definitively
start with,
happen.
I think you could potentially start with not sending children out, but starting a club in different areas and bringing people in to teach kids. So there are lots of, let's say, business, for example, there are lots of
Maybe.
successful business owners and
But I
retired people
also-
who can come in and talk about their experiences and educate kids about what it's like to be a doctor, start a business.
I also
Which
think
we
though
do,
that-
just for the record, we do many of those things at both Bedwell and the middle school. You know, Bedwell, the enrichment program, and the middle school through the lunch in the library program, community members are invited in. They present things about their hobbies, things about their occupations. So that all exists already. I just don't know that we see it as part of the landscape at the high school in the ways that we might.
Well,
I also-
I'll just take entrepreneurship as an example. Suppose you gave children the kids in high school an opportunity to try and start small businesses and bring in some entrepreneur mentors to actually help them. This is what happens when people graduate from college and they want to start a business. I do a lot of mentoring. So if you can get some people in the community to actually help, you get kids and you find out if they're interested. And they learn a lot, not just by hearing people talk, but by experiencing it.
Authentic.
They don't have to go out.
learning, right?
Authentic experience.
Right,
But
they
there's
don't-
one
they don't have to go out.
So when we, I mean,
So,
so we're,
you know, I
normally you have
just,
students that wanna start a club, right?
so I think that we had a little bit of this kind of conversation.
Yes.
And I think that the clear takeaway, which is what led to the concept of a phased approach, is it's long overdue. It's long overdue. And we need to start by starting, right? And we wanna have sort of the North Star of like, hey, maybe in year 2, this is actually a structured learning experience that is part of the curriculum. But right now, we need to have a more structured way of bringing people in, making people aware of like the art of the possible. What careers, what professions, what can you do after high school? Bringing people in, linking them maybe with after-school internships. A lot of programmatic stuff that we need to do, as well as certification. So the idea is like, yeah, we got to get moving on this thing, and we got to do it today, and we got to start making an impact for like next year.
But
And let's not make it part of the curriculum as sort of the impediment to making progress.
I would also like to say though, I understand, Jan, what you're saying, that sometimes if a student hasn't been exposed to something, they don't know what they're missing. But I do know they are exposed to a lot of the programs that Dr. Dempsey just talked about. So I don't want to discount that in high school. I certainly think that tapping into the students with regards to this type of program is critical, because if we're going to make it an opportunity for them in the curriculum, it does mean they will be giving something else up. And we need their input. Is that a trade-off you want to
We
make?
also run courses based
Well, I
on student
mean,
requests. You wouldn't want to build something and spend a lot of time.
So again, this is
building
all part of the
something that nobody
implementation
wanted.
component,
Yeah.
and this is what we've been
We
talking
need a
about in
lot more
curriculum, and it's gonna take a lot more talking, because we
I-
can
I
stay
would
on this
just want-
topic for the next 20 minutes.
But I would just
We don't
caution
want
the curriculum committee not to, suffer analysis paralysis, where they're trying to
Oh, no,
analyze.
this-
they never do,
this-
curriculum
this-
never does that.
I think this,
Don't say that,
the
Janice.
point is that
Never does that.
The point is that there's so much low-hanging fruit right now that we need to get moving. And so I think going from 0 to full curriculum is where you get the analysis paralysis, right? It's like, like, oh my gosh, I can't really figure this out. But like, hey, just starting with like career nights, getting entrepreneurs in, implementation, getting linked with internships, finding out, we need to really think deeply as we go forward with the strategic plan about what we want to message to the children as they enter high school and as they go through high school, what it's all about and what your next steps after that are all about. And we need to provide resources during those 4 years that are not just traditional academic resources, but career and professional development resources, so that they understand they have an eye to the prize, that this is where I'm trying to go. We got a lot of work to do, and we're committed. The curriculum committee is not looking to kind of like sit on this thing. We're committed, but
It's a process.
we
It's
just
a
need to
process.
start. We need to move.
You just can't.
Well, we could
Yeah.
talk about this all night.
So we could talk about it all night.
But we
Yeah.
need to, but we need to move on.
And obviously, if the chairperson were leading, this would be a very short conversation. And it's gotten out of control.
And I was just going by the committee last
Well, the
week.
birthday guy wanted to get out of here. But I know it's an important issue for you. It's a deeply, deeply important issue for me. And I know Jan is gonna be engaged in this thing. Janice has been harping on this for a long time. There's no interest in slow rolling. It's actually interested in accelerating. We just have to figure out
It
how
does
we
sound,
accelerate.
it sounds like what Kathy is saying, this analysis paralysis, I like that expression, but I just want to caution everyone, students have 4 years in this place. People can get reelected, sit on this Board of Ed for years and years and years. Superintendent is 5 years, and then after that, we don't know how many years, whatever. We do need to get things done, and I want to remind you, because I watch this all the time. Kids come into high school, and then by the time you turn around, they're out of high school. And I think we need to provide those opportunities. I hear what you're saying, I agree with that. We need to get something going, but we spend an inordinate amount of time on this board analyzing things. And I don't believe that if kids go into this, they're gonna give up something. You know, we could start things and involve the public. That was the whole idea of community relations, involve the community and entrepreneurs and everything else. There's a lot of good ideas, and to just keep analyzing these things is we're cheating the kids. We're only here for 4 years.
Yeah, I don't think with respect to this particular
I
issue,
don't think that's right.
it's analysis. I think it may be that the answer is easier than a curriculum-based solution.
And I would just remind the curriculum committee though, that there are resources that we can tap into. So in terms of assessing interest, I mean, why don't we reach out to some of these schools that we visited and ask them how they did it, how did they?
Actually, that was brought up
Kids don't know what
before.
they're
It was brought up in
interested in.
curriculum because they said that you guys went out to the schools, and we know there are people out there with expertise.
We should use.
We also
And
know
we're
that
gonna
some of
use
those
it.
schools got $500,000 grants from the
Yeah.
state, which is something that we don't necessarily have as a resource to necessarily draw upon at this moment.
One of the things that we should remember is that when the kids graduate, they'll have about a year in college before they have to pick a major. And most of those majors are things they learn nothing about in high school. So the more we can expose them to, the better they have an opportunity of finding something they're passionate about that they want to major in.
I will say one thing, being on the curriculum committee, one thing I learned over time was that we have a curriculum and we have ideas and we may want to infuse different programs, but remember, when you infuse something else, something has to come out. So, you know, it is part of that. It's not an easy, you have a lot of great ideas, you know, we all have a lot of great ideas. But it does take vetting and it does take time, and that's what we're doing. That's why we have the meetings.
Well, and what's a lot easier is extracurricular. You can make it happen much faster, and we can start there very, very quickly. But I suggest we.
Okay.
Anybody want
we
to
go
talk about
we go to
anything
the vote.
else here besides,
What else goes in?
if not, I can do the
I
roll
think we
call.
can vote.
Let's vote.
I think we have 1 through 5 as amended and 3 from the addendum.
moved them. Yeah, and I got a second.
You get a second,
I got
yeah.
the call. I
Yeah.
just need to do the roll call.
Right.
Yes. All right, Mr. Baker.
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino.
Yes.
Mr. Mayo.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro.
Yes.
Mrs. Tober.
Yes.
Ms. Virtue.
Yes.
Ms. Birch.
Yes.
Mrs. Lees.
Yes. Okay, now we're gonna skip to personnel policy because we need Tim to vote on something and then he's gonna, okay.
Alright, we'll just. Okay, so we'll start with personnel. We met on December 3rd and all of our committee was in attendance. It was actually a relatively short meeting, and Dr. Dempsey just went over preliminary needs anticipated for 2021, and we discussed the BMS personnel as it relates to the administration's discussions and work on the EHS rotating job schedule and some of the traveling back and forth. So I will move items 1 through 12 on the agenda, and items 6, 13, 14, and 15 on the addendum. Can someone second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just for the people in the audience, item 15 on the addendum is to approve the Shaw Memorandum of Agreement, which is the contract for the administrators, which has not been ratified by their side, so we can't discuss the specifics of that in public until that happens. That should hopefully happen next week, but we are voting on it on our end tonight.
I just think that a correction needs to be made for 2A. It says the start date is 3/11/2019. I think that's supposed to be 2020. Just for record. Actually,
I don't know.
actually A and 2 and 3,
Maybe
should that be
end date.
2020?
The start.
3/30/20
Start
and
already,
3/11/20.
March of 19 is over, done.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
We'll fix those.
Thanks, yes, thanks for catching that. Roll call? All right, Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino?
Yes on everything, I'm abstaining on item 15.
Mr. Bale?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
Okay, do you wanna
Yeah,
head out for your
excuse myself.
happy
Thank
birthday?
Thank you.
Okay, so policy, we took a look at the random student drug testing policy and the substance abuse policy. Jan had brought to our attendance and attention, wanted us to take a look at the consequences and do a comparison. And so we took a look at those, and with the exception of the out-of-school suspension, for both the first and second offense for the substance abuse policy, the consequences are consistent. So we had a discussion with regards to that out-of-school suspension, and the committee felt that it was appropriate to have that out-of-school suspension for the substance abuse policy, because that would mean that a student was attending school under the influence, where the random drug testing policy could mean that a student partook in using a substance on the weekend or in the evening. They're not at school under the influence. That's the difference between the two. So we did feel like it would be appropriate to have somewhat of a more stringent consequence for the substance abuse policy. And so we're recommending that that just stays the same. Then we talked about our the Board of Ed agenda, having attended some sessions at New Jersey school boards, as well as just some feedback. we just wanted to take a look at the agenda again to make sure that we felt that it was helping us to operate our meetings in an efficient way so that we can get our business done as well as communicate clearly to the public. We looked at some different school districts, we looked at agendas, we looked at how they conducted their meetings, and we're pretty much in line. There are some nuances. Some districts will have a president's report monthly. We are one of the only districts that has our, at the end, we call it supplementary matters. A lot of boards call it board business, which, you know, we can look at changing or we don't have to, but we just really wanted to make sure that we are able to communicate appropriately and get our business done, because that is the job of this meeting. So we felt like we're doing a pretty good job of that, and our agenda really is kind of supporting those goals. And that was it. So in thinking about what Lou brought to light, how do you want to proceed? Do you want to move?
You can table them and we can certainly look at them in more detail at the next meeting. You've already gone through first reading and, you know, I don't, until
Right.
you.
Let's move it to next meeting, where we'll determine in policy whether we need to make any changes and put it back into first reading, or whether, based on his feedback, we're okay to
Absolutely.
keep it in second reading.
So then we're not voting on it.
So we're not, no, we're not gonna do
You're
that.
voting to table it though.
We are?
Yeah.
Okay,
So you're making a
so I'm
motion to
making a
table it?
motion to table the second reading of policy and regulation 8600.
Second, somebody?
Second.
Alright, Greg? Thank you.
Any discussion?
Alright, Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacono?
Yes.
Mr. Mayo?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees? Yes. Okay, last but not least, Bob?
Feels strange to go last.
I bet.
That's okay.
That's true, you're not last.
I'm sorry about Kathy then.
But you're.
Well, she said last but not least, but that's okay. Anyway, the finance committee met last Wednesday for 2.5 hours. The first item on the agenda, we talked about capital projects for the 2020-21 school year, because we're going into formulating the budget for next year. So our architect came and talked about getting generator installed for Bedwell, since Bedwell's the only school that is lacking a generator besides the Alcott building. So he came up with costs for a 100 kilowatt generator and a 150 kilowatt generator, and the committee felt that we don't want to overspend, or what we want to give we want to have a cushion that we can make sure we can do all the boilers, the air conditioning, and the servers. So we felt he's going to come back with costs for 110 kilowatts to 140, so we can see what it costs as you ramp up. So 110 might be a better choice. So we'll have more to report on that next month. We also have to replace what they call the rooftop units on the middle school gym. There's 2 of them up there that do just heating, and they're getting to be 20 years old, and they need replacement. Those parts are not be able to get easily, and we don't have any cooling in the gymnasium, so if we put in the new ones, we would get a heating and cooling combination for about $400,000. So between the putting the 100 kilowatt generator in and the rooftop unit in, you're going to spend at least $600,000 and change. So we want to make sure that the committee feels that's a good spend, and we want to do that. So we'll have more to tell the board about that next month. We then met with 3 representatives of the Somerset Hills YMCA, and we discussed the contract for their summer camp, which they've had here for the last 3 years. And We asked them a lot of questions, we talked about what they do for us, what we do for them, blah, 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 back and forth. So we proposed, after they left, the committee talked, we came up with a fee and for a 3-year contract, and they came back today and accepted our proposal of $50,000 for this coming summer. 3% increase the following summer and another 3% the following summer. So that's what we're voting on. That's on the agenda on the addendum. So I think that's a win-win for everybody because they provide a lot of services to our students and it's a partnership with them. So then we talked about putting GPSs on the school buses, and we've gotten quotes from the vendor, and the administration feels it's best to put the GPSs on only 3 buses in P-PAC Gladstone because those are the problematic ones that, well, we're concerned about going over the mountain, dead spots, things like that. So we're going to go ahead just the 3 buses and see how it works, and also see what people use the app for and if parents use it and whatever it is before we do the entire fleet. So this is going to be a test program there. We also reviewed the 2 fundraisers that are on the agenda. We did note that one fundraiser has already started, but it's got a long way to go, so we're still going to recommend the approval of that, even though we'll tell them they should do it better next time. We also approved, it's the budget schedule, which is on the agenda for approval. So we're going to be doing a lot of budget work between January, February, and March. So that's when most of the budget comes together, and we'll be doing that. So that was the end of the report. So do I want to move finance items 1 through, hang on a second. Finance 1 through 7. There's one item on the agenda. Do I have a second? Second. Any questions?
What's happening with Jan's, like, your idea to test that GPS, not on a bus, but just to test it?
Right. I suggested that we
I
actually
know.
just run a testing
I know,
vehicle.
what happened with that? We are actually having somebody, I spoke with Jeremy about this and how could we kind of problem solve this without actually having to get something from the transportation software company. So our phones are also able to track that way, so someone is writing each of the routes with that. They started this week, I think they did 1 route this week, so we are going to do that over the next week or so.
It may, just because you drop out, it may pick back up again.
It should, and
As most of us, when we're navigating around the United States, sometimes you're not sure where you're going because it goes blank, but it picks up later. So it may not be an issue, but I don't know.
I feel like they've gotten a lot better. It's gotten a lot better over the mountain, like in the past year or 2. But are there 4 P-PAC Gladstone routes?
there's the Far Hills route. I'm thinking it's SH07, SH08, and HM09.
Isn't there
And then the Bedwell one of 9.
Okay. There's I thought there's only 3. Okay.
Then there's a Far Hills one.
Isn't that Far Hills end up going through Gladstone as well?
I'm gonna have to,
I think if we're
look at
doing
that.
just 3, I think we should do all 4. If you could do it, I mean, because I think there is a route that goes through Far Hills, but it also goes through Gladstone. It might, I don't know, is there consideration of doing all 4 routes that go through Gladstone?
They just had to, you just had to
We have a
cost,
quote for 3.
they had the cost for 3, I mean, we can project it out.
And I
We
think
could
we
do all.
looked at it too as a
We do all.
pilot.
As a
So the
pilot?
thought is, let's see how it works in terms of viability, information provided to parents, and what the usage is. You know, we don't really have any kind of benchmark for any of that. But certainly, we're not looking to exclude routes that should be part of it.
With the thought that if it works out well, we can And the other one's very quick, very quickly, you don't have to wait another year for that.
Right.
Like,
And
you do all
the Far Hills route hasn't been a problem?
I don't know, well, to my knowledge.
Okay.
I think the three that you mentioned
I
are
remember
the
Are
ones
the
that
bigger,
tend to be
the 10
Yeah.
issues?
Cause there's one that's pretty much a street, I think.
Yeah, and without looking at the route in front of me, I can't comment on it right now. I don't know if that other one that you're thinking of does go over the mountain, and I thought it was more of, but I thought it was more of an out and back to Far
They all
Hills,
go
but-
up Campbell, right?
So, was there any particular reason you didn't reach out to the company to see if they could work with us to test if it worked?
Because they have been very difficult so far with every step along the way here. So when I spoke with Jeremy about like how can we problem solve this so that we can get some data on it, that was a more,
But nobody did call.
I did not make that call because I've worked with 3 different people in the company so far. And every time I call, I get delays, and I was trying to move it along. I was trying to get some progress on it before we go on winter break.
Can I just ask, are there any security concerns about people who don't have children on that bus, or
There is,
people that we don't want to have access to that information and where the buses are?
and certainly Heather, I'll let you speak to this. We have talked to the chief about his initial concerns. The access would definitely be limited. So it would not be something that just because you had the app, you could necessarily enter into. You'd need to have identifying information for your child. We also talked about which menu options we would want to be available to parents, because I feel as though an ETA will be helpful, but the concern around security has to do with tracking pathways of vehicles, which was something that we wanted to avoid. So I think all of these reasons are reasons that we thought a softer beginning and launch with a more limited population that we could be in touch with. We have not reached out to those parents yet to say this is happening, but we really want to ensure that we have a dialogue so that we can measure the efficacy and the usefulness of the app before we spend a lot of money on it.
Anything else?
Do a roll call?
Okay, Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino?
Yes.
Mr. Mail?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
Okay, community relations, Kathy.
No.
We still have facilities.
So
We have to do
Oh, yeah, you're
the
right.
facility, so I'm going to move.
I feel like we talked about facilities.
I know, I talked about it.
You're right.
So I'm gonna move items 1 through 3 on the agenda and the addendum. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions on those items?
Roll call? All right. Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino?
Yes.
Mr. Mail?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The Community Relations Committee met on December 15th for about an hour. It was a bit of a shorter meeting, but it was a quite productive one. We started first with the topic of the job fair. And one of the first things that we, I think, first decided was that it probably made more sense to call this concept a life expo rather than a job fair. So what we wanted to do is we had discussions about the Life Expo that we had heard about in other school districts, and we wanted to actually take it through the community relations viability checklist. So the committee spent the bulk of our meeting time going through that checklist. We felt that the presented idea certainly aligned with the SHSD mission in terms of providing students with opportunities to work through and manage authentic life experiences. The idea really is deemed to be an enhancement of what we currently do, so it's not a new concept, but it's really believed to be an enhancement. And furthermore, assist students to really better navigate the real world through life experiences and experiences that they may see in the future.
We felt that the program would or could potentially benefit both BMS and or BHS students. And the more we talked about the possible program, we really felt that it was a novel way to quote unquote package learning and make it more hands-on for students who were to participate in such an activity. In terms of resources required, we really felt that that was yet to be determined, but that involvement from the local business alliance or the Chamber of Commerce would be needed. So some time would have to be spent and discussions had with that group to get their full buy-in. It's felt that the idea would be sustainable in both the long term and the short term, and that the timelines for this concept really are still to be determined based on the scale and scope of any rollout that we might have. So based on everything that I just spoke about, the Community Relations Committee recommends handing this concept over to the Curriculum Committee for further evaluation. Dr. Dempsey updated the committee on the status of the BHS student access. Colleen Butler updated the group on the timelines regarding the SLE program, which we just heard about from Tim. And lastly, Dr. Dempsey informed the committee that there is a possibility that perhaps some of the laptops that have been retired and wiped within the district could possibly be donated to a local charity, and that's something that's still being explored. So that essentially wraps up the minutes from our meeting. We have nothing to move at this time, but I just did want to say lastly, and on a personal note, I really wanted to thank Greg. It's really your perseverance and your relentless pursuit that brought this committee to fruition. This was really your baby, Greg. I know you identified the need, you saw the value for it to be put in place, and you were the one that got it kicked off and implemented, so thank you very much. That's my report.
Supplementary matters from the board.
I have a lengthy list, but I'm going to reduce that to 3 things that I do want to wish this board well in the future. I know there are many challenges ahead. I just have 3 things that I would like to update. The Lou Palm Award, Bob Baker and myself put a lot of time into doing that. We're very proud of that. I'm certain Bob is proud of it as I am. Just like if we can get the 2 names that are have received the awards to date are not up there yet, and if we can do that, I don't think it would take a whole lot. I've spoken at length with this board in executive and public meetings on a lot of different things, but I would like to just, in my last words on this board, in regard to Title IX, I do believe, and this has been my life for 44 years, I do believe I know, and I can say with 100% certainty that we are in violation of our own policies, our 2 policies that I brought up in finance with Title IX. I do believe that for every lawyer that will say that don't worry about anything, Somerset Hills School District, we're good, Title IX, nobody's going to say anything, we're fine. There's another 10 lawyers who would say just the opposite. And I don't want to see this board get put in a position where we can't defend ourselves, we look bad, or we're spending a lot of money paying lawyers to defend something that I think we could be proactive and make a difference for a lot of athletes in this school. I don't want to see us be penny wise and pound foolish in this. And then the last thing, and I've spoken at length about this, I would like to see our once former successful middle school sports program reinstituted. I know Gretchen is working towards that end. I'm hoping that we can find a way to do this so that we can correct what I believe was an egregious decision on a passport to eliminate it. I think it's very important that we provide those opportunities for those kids. And again, you can't, it's something you can't measure. Those kids being involved in sports and the kids who can't afford to be involved and pay for to be involved in those programs, we lose a lot of those kids, and you can't put a number on that, you can't track that, and I just feel like, and I trust that you're working hard
Yes,
towards that.
absolutely.
And I have a good feeling that that's going to come
We
back.
have a coffee scheduled at the middle school in January in the evening, and the topic will be the middle school sports. Certainly, I shared with the board some financial data at this point, but I have also spoken to some people internally, and so I have some ideas there as well. I'm confident we can make
My
progress.
fingers crossed, and I'm confident. Thank you. That's it.
I just have one thing for supplementary. We talked about this briefly at curriculum, and we talked about bringing it up at supplementary matters at school boards. I was fortunate to attend a session where a school district has students participate in a board meeting, and I wanted to bring that idea to the board to think about and see if it was something that we might like to implement going forward. No, it's been a long meeting, but the gist of it is there's a blind application process where students are interested, apply, and the administrators select the students, and they are selected for every role, and they also involve principals in the meeting just to get the most amount of kids involved as possible. And they actively participate during one of our public meetings where they will be able to vote, and you as a board member will either concur or not to, cast your vote. But we can get all the details of this. This district is a K through 6 district, so they do it in 6th grade. Obviously, we have the luxury of deciding K through 12 what grade we might think is appropriate. But I thought it was a fantastic idea, and looking at the strategic plan with civic engagement, it's a great way to get students to participate in what might be one of the most important topics for them in, their civic lives at that age. So I just wanted to.
Just to say, I did suggest that as well. That was another one. I ran up the flagpole and no one saluted. What we did is we got what we have here. My suggestion was more to have, is what you're saying, so I do hope that goes through as well.
Okay, great. So we can, talk about that further, but.
Any other board? Okay. Now would be a time for non-agenda public comments, if you have something. Dr. Mack.
No!
Hi,
Wendy LaBruno. I live here, I'm here all the time. I actually reside in Bedminster, but I'm at the police office Butler. I'm here at the high school virtually
Yes, you are.
24/7. Quick question, Monica had mentioned during the curriculum discussion about SLA, the rotate drop schedule for the high school that's proposed for next year. Is the board actually voting on it, or is it not, is it just
There is no
school
need
procedure?
for the
Okay.
board necessarily to vote on it. I have spoken to the board council on that, and that is seen as what the administration provides to the teachers. Certainly, we would not be doing that unilaterally without the support of the Board of Education.
Very good. I just wanted to know because of course I'm putting things in documents. Thank you.
I'll be faster next time. Hi, Jeff Hammond, Flintlock Court. I'm actually here in my capacity as a council member for the borough here. Some of you may be familiar with the RideWise program that was championed by Councilwoman Zamara and led to the walkability study on Berners Avenue last year.
Which, just if I can interrupt for one quick second, I don't know that I ever remembered to tell the board, April Friedman, as the assistant principal at Bedwell, went within the last 2 weeks to RideWise's breakfast, where Bedwell was honored and they won some award for their walk to school initiative.
Actually, the middle school also got an award too.
Wasn't anybody there for them though?
That I don't know. But the follow-up to that, that was actually funded by what's called a technical services grant. There's no exchange of money. What they do is they have experts come in and then tell you what they think is the art of the possible, and then it's up to the borough to decide whether they want to pursue it or not. But the follow-up to that, they've just had a call for the next phase of their technical service grant. This is sponsored by the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. And Christine Zamar and I are going to pursue a technical services grant looking at bicycle corridors and networks. The focus would be the area between Kiwanis Park and the Polo Grounds area, Middle School, Bedwell, focusing on Pine Streets, Maple, Berners Avenue, Mount Airy, 202, Wesley, Olcott, Scenic Drive, and Old Colony. Those would be the primary streets that would feed into the area, the center of the town, and the library, sort of the chief focus. And so, unfortunately, this grant only came to our attention at the last minute, so we're rushing to put this all together. Otherwise, I would have prepped you all way in advance. But what we have to do is on our application is list the stakeholders who are interested in supporting us, or at least saying we think this is a great idea. It doesn't commit the Board of Education to anything. There's actually no transfer of money. They just have experts come in and say, this is what we think could be done. You could have bike lanes, you could have wider roads, you could have changes of your sidewalks, et cetera, lighting, stop signs, et cetera. So what I'm pitching to you is, could I ask for that in your consideration that the board says that yes, we would be considered a stakeholder and we would support the borough's efforts in applying for this technical services grant.
I don't know, what do the board members think?
Well, can I say something? Question.
Sure.
What, when you say about sidewalks, road changes, so who pays for that? Say you want to widen the road to put a bike lane in.
Right, well that would be up to the borough to decide. So let me just give you an example, however. On the walkability study that was done primarily for Berners Avenue, they had some suggestions about changing the sidewalks. They also had suggestions for changing the shoulders of the road and some stop signs. We didn't, for the reasons you have the finances to do the sidewalks. We could create the shoulder, which is on the plan to do, and we are instituting a three-way stop sign at the intersection of Berners Avenue and Garibaldi that we could do. So, it would be up to the borough then to pick and choose what's feasible. What they give us is a laundry list of what you could do, and you have to decide what you can do.
What's the date that this has to be, application has to be put in?
The application's gonna, no, it's we have 10 days, December the 20th. But I can't amend them. If you said, oh, we need time to discuss it, and we can let you have an answer at your next board meeting, I can amend the application so that they don't actually make the grant until May. So I could fudge that. I would prefer you to say yes today, but if you can't, I understand that. This is last minute. I can wait that on that too.
I personally would like to research it a little bit more, but it's up to the majority.
I'd like to make a motion that we support it.
Well, it doesn't mean we're not gonna support it, it means
No,
that we might
that's
not.
all you do. All he's asking is we're supporting him applying for the grant. We might not get the grant.
We would be named as a stakeholder on the application,
Right.
Right, I have to list the list of stakeholders, so I have the library working on it, downtown Burnsville, the Chamber of Commerce, I've talked to them, a host of groups. I would just list it, here are the people that are supportive of the concept. That's the extent of your
could we have a look at the application and then submit a yes by email? Could we do that?
Yes,
or?
my only question is there a concern that if it is in fact what Bob is saying and what it sounds like you're describing, Jeff, that you are naming the Board of Education as a stakeholder that would be interested in this notion of bike corridors being explored and the expertise of this group, is there a downside that the board sees that to?
I think Dennis's point, we don't know what we see because we don't know anything about it, so I would tend to agree with Janice in terms of, if we can get a little more information, I don't think there's a problem in getting, I could make a decision certainly by December 20th, if I had some information, but I wouldn't want to
Do you have
blindly.
anything that we can share directly with the board?
But yeah, I sent you an email.
I know, it came late today, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, I tried to call
You
on
called
Monday.
me, I know.
Yeah, so I sent an email with a link to the RideWise group, and then I also included the resolution with them.
Well, I saw the email.
Okay.
And
it's
the Borough
essentially-
Council provided, I'm sorry.
So we can make sure that everybody
we'll forward
gets
it out.
that,
I didn't
and
read
then if there's a consensus, we'll make sure that you get that.
Yeah, and listen, I've been in your seat where someone makes a proposal that you haven't had a chance to research, so I'm sympathetic to that. And as I said, we can, because actually Christine pointed out that on our last application, we were able to provide addendas, so that is full fairness, that's possible.
Oh, we'll share that out, I don't think it would take people
I would like,
a few days.
I understand that when something comes to us in a way like this, where we have to make a decision quickly, we don't reply all, we reply only to whoever. So, Gretchen, if you send it out, we reply to you. I would just ask that any suggestions or comments that any board members make, if you could then reshare it with the board, as opposed to us replying all, so that if somebody has something that I would behoove me to know, value,
Right, absolutely.
then I have that information before I can make a final decision. So.
Let me just say that, I think it's a good
Can't do
idea.
that.
to say
It's like
that.
it's like
It's the same thing.
Still makes it public. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, it's nothing negative about the program. I like some time to really think about things and look things over before you just say, okay.
I understand that completely.
And essentially, this is a feasibility, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't, go ahead.
You're requesting that they do a feasibility study, is that what it is? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, well, they call it a technical assistance, but yes, that's what
Essentially
it is.
feasibility.
But, there actually were 6 components, and we chose the bicycle one. There were other things. It's actually tied into sustainable Jersey. The idea being that it's not just for kids, by the way, it's just actually also for adults. We cut down on car usage. They may come back with something that's really simple, which is to increase bicycle usage. You ought to have more bike racks around town. If you go around Burnersville, the only bike racks you see are at the library.
And at the schools.
At the schools.
Is there a train station?
No, they're not at the train station.
No, there should be.
So anyhow, they could come up with something simple. That's really important. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but we don't know what they're going to come up with. But you have the information, and any other information, you've got my email. I'll be able to provide it to you right away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gladstone. I was interested in the discussion about the agenda. Did they do any surveys as to which districts have public comments for any issue at the beginning of the meeting? Because I think it would avoid something like a councilman sitting here till 9:45 to ask a question. So
This is early for us.
Yeah.
What happens at the council meetings?
Sorry?
What happens at the council meetings for non-agenda items?
They have a public comment at the beginning and the end, so public comment happens right up front.
And you can comment on anything, agenda items or non-agenda items.
Anything. Which I
Do
think
you want me
is,
to
actually,
answer that?
you actually have to, they actually ask that you reserve the comments on an agenda item for when that agenda comes up. So it's really primarily for non-agenda items, but
And then for
we're a little
each
loose,
additional.
we're a little loose about that.
Each additional category, then you can get up and speak
That's right.
about that comment.
That's correct.
Do you want me
So
to address
I'd be
that?
interested, because I think that, you're talking about community relations, you have people sitting here till 10 o'clock at night to make a comment that's not on the agenda. I think it makes more sense to have a public comment in the beginning of the meeting. than at
So
the
do
end.
you want, I
No,
can
I was just
address-
asking if that was
Yeah.
part of the
No, so
information.
we-
You were talking about agenda and communications with with the public and making the agendas work better.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was something that I know
We did
Greg
discuss,
was really
yeah, so,
interested in
I think it was
something like
my
that too.
first or second meeting on the board, maybe third. That was proposed, so it was about, I'm going into my third year. So we did have lengthy conversations about that at that point. It was before Dr. Dempsey had become superintendent. So no, we did not discuss that specifically this time, and we didn't look at that.
Well, what we did discuss at the time, we've had public comments in the beginning at certain times, and you know, we were at the school, and we did vote against it, and the reason is, and I went to the school board's meeting, and one of the sessions I went to was about how boards can work well with superintendent and how you can make the whole process work better. And one of the things they repeated over and over was that we're a board having a board meeting in public, okay? And that you really always have to go back to that. Also, other times when we've had public comments up front, you know, sometimes there's a burning issue and you could spend a whole lot of time on that. And then, you know, we're here to do our work. And I understand what you're saying. I really prefer doing our work up front and then having public comments later. I feel strongly about that.
Because you could be here at midnight and you haven't voted on something that you have to vote on.
But you have the control of the meeting, you have 30 minutes for public comments, whether it's agenda or not. You can cut it off at the 30-minute mark. You can limit it to the 3 minutes that you have. If you're strict with your rules, you're out in 30 minutes. So, I mean, it's not that you're gonna be there for
We could, but I know in the past we haven't.
Well,
so-
it's just a matter of managing meetings, so, I mean, you can do it if you really wanted to do it, so. I just threw that, I didn't know, I thought you were at a conference about agendas, and I just thought if that was something that was discussed.
No, no, I'm sorry if I misspoke. The meeting was about Robert's rules, not specifically about agendas.
Oh, I thought you.
No, that
I
led us
misunderstood what you were saying, I thought you were talking about how to
Yeah.
organize your agenda and how to
No,
make it work
it was really specific to Robert's rules,
more public
how
friendly.
to apply, you know, the order of business,
Okay,
actually.
3 minutes
So,
ago.
I'm good with that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you.
Happy holidays.